What would you rather own, Jake? Zamir White or those Trump coins?
Can I take door 3?
No, I think the Trump coins might have more value right now.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog. Use code Mayo at Underdog right now. Get yourself a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And if you hit the newsletter, where the power rankings are, where the pickups are, where the injury cheat sheet is, down in the description right now, you'll also find my Underdog play for Monday Night Football. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com is on the line with me to power rank these teams and go through everything team by team on a fantasy basis. You can always hit the time code, so check out the tiers. Maybe I'll list the teams in the tiers. Jake, what do you think?
I think maybe you should do that.
Okay. Just more work for Pat, of course. As always. Listen, enough people have complained about you not being on the ranking show that this will be I'm trying to make it up to people. I'll put your teams in the time codes.
Hold on. Are you telling me that you're actually paying attention to the comments?
No, people are tweeting at me about it.
Oh, okay. So technically the comments, but not like, yeah.
Listen, it's not that Jake and I don't want to do the ranking show. Just logistically, it doesn't work. We don't have time. I have time to record it when I do, and that's the only time I have to record it, and Jake's not available. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, like our schedules don't mesh. If we were a married couple, we wouldn't see each other anymore.
That's right. We're like Key and Peele. They were complaining about not being able to see each other as adults. We get to see each other on Monday mornings, and frankly, I like this show better.
I actually enjoy this show as a different twist. We did the other one for too long. We needed a change of pace. It's the same thing. It's just like you gave your top 10, 20, and then I'd be like, these two people suck. We had a discussion and moved on.
Well, let's go team by team. We'll break down who the actual power rankings for the NFL, plus the fantasy implications of each of these teams. We'll start off with my number one team in a tier by themselves, ever so slightly. And it's not like they're a dominant team, but they win again on Sunday Night Football. It's the Chiefs. And is Rashee Rice a top 5 receiver?
Yes and yes. Yes, as in I also have them number 1, and yes, Rashee Rice is, because if you're going to get that kind of target volume for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, then yes, you are.
So what happens with everyone else on this team as it pertains to fantasy is like Carson Steele got the majority of the work, didn't lead to anything, and now we're going to get potentially 3 more names into the mix. Like, that's not good news.
It's not, but I mean, like, so the Edwards-Helaire situation is kind of still up in the air of like whether or not he comes back when eligible. Of course, the Kareem Hunt thing, but Kareem Hunt wasn't active, and they actually signed Ingram to the active roster versus just elevating, which kind of says, is Kareem Hunt ever going to be a thing? You and I talked about it last week. Still agree that Kareem Hunt is more of a threat to Steele than he is to Pirine. If this is the same format going out next week, as in like there's still no Hunt activated and it's these 3, I would still say that Steele is in the RB2 conversation. Actually, now I had him as an RB3 in front of Pirine last week because we knew he would get the lead work. We didn't know it would be quite that much, but it looks like it's clearly him in the lead. Pirine, kind of a third down change of pace of the old McKinnon role versus actually being a 50-50 split. So I say Steele's an RB2 until another name gets added in. And if you're talking about the passing game, it's the same answer I keep coming up with. It's twofold. You said it's that the Chiefs are just going to coast, and I don't disagree with that much. But if you looked at last night's game, there was a play that Kelsey was wide open and actually threw his arm up, and Mahomes just wasn't looking at it. It wasn't like Mahomes didn't want to go to him. There was already a play, and he was already on his way throwing. I think that was actually Rice or Worthy or something like that on that play, but he didn't see him breaking free. I still think the more Worthy, as we saw last night, the more Worthy starts getting involved, you're going to see safety starting to respect his speed a little bit more, and that just opens things up a little bit for Kelsey. And still not the number 1 tight end, but I still have faith that he'll get back to top 5.
So you do think that he could be a top 5? Like going into next week, do you think you'll rank him?
Back end.
What's that?
I said back end top 5, like on the low end of the top 5. I don't even know if he's in the top 2 or 3 anymore.
No, but next week when you do the week 4 rankings, like I'm not going to have Travis Kelsey inside my top 5 unless like McBride.
You might have to, because who's left?
Okay, would you rather have Mark Andrews or Travis Kelsey the rest of the season?
Kelsey.
I think I would too. Is Andrews hurt, or do they not like him anymore?
I just think it's this offense. I think it's just the fact that the only one that matters is Zay Flowers, who, by the way, tied with Bateman for the team lead with 3 whole receptions yesterday. But this is what the Ravens offense always is. we've always struggled to have two options. It was Mark Andrews and somebody else, but that and somebody else in the past had been inconsistent. I think now Mark Andrews is the somebody else. It's Zay Flowers and somebody else. So Mark Andrews, a low-end tight end one, but I think you're going to have about as many games as we did yesterday as you will good games the rest of the season. I just think that's how their offense runs now, especially with Henry.
Juju is only going to ever have any sort of value if he catches a touchdown, which is not going to be every single week. So unless you play in a Juju only league, then you probably don't need to pick him up. I think out of like the 12 wide receivers I have as pickups this week, he's number 11 of the 12. So you don't need to actively go target him. My take on the steal thing is, look, he's probably the most playable of these guys, although we did see Pirine play more in the first half when the Chiefs were actually down in that game, and the moment they got up, it was all steal all the time. I guess my issue with it is Pacheco's so much better than all of these guys and makes a lot of his own work from breaking tackles. Like, Steele doesn't break anything. He gets touched and he falls down.
I mean, but he's a lead option, and you're not wrong about the Pacheco thing, but we don't have Pacheco for conceivably
how about this?
Half the season, if not more.
Devin Singletary or Carson Steele. Like, the answer is Devin Singletary like 100% of the time.
I don't think so. Tyrone Tracy was involved a lot in that game.
So was Singletary.
Continue to check it. I know, but I think the Tracy thing, like, this is somebody who was hurt to begin the year, who was somebody who was a rookie that didn't get a ton of preseason work also because of that. This is already 2 weeks, like last week and now yesterday, kind of seeing that increase. I think we're going to get to the point where it's 60-40, which, of course, you're like 60 is still great, but it's 60 on the Giants. Like, I don't know what the hell happened to the Browns yesterday, but this is not a team that I expect to be in the lead of much of any more games going forward. If you look at that schedule on top of it, I would still say I'm taking if you took 60-60 workload, and arguably Steele's is higher than that, but 60-60 workloads, I'm taking the one that runs for the Chiefs, even if he hits the offensive line and only gets one more yard. I really do think Tracy's going to be, if I had a sell high candidate, it would be like Singletary would be probably one of five that's going to be on my list this week.
I would tend to agree with you that he's probably a sell high. I think it's just how down I am on Carson Steele as a valuable fantasy prospect. Like, I would be trying to sell him too. If I have Carson Steele in my league, which I don't, and I had him, and you were in my league, I'd try to trade him to you for Devin Singletary.
Oh, no. I would actually get rid of both of them if I could.
Sure, but I mean, if that was the case, like I just say, I'd rather have Singletary long-term than have Steele long-term. So Kansas City remains at number 1 in the power rankings. They probably will until they lose. But you would have to agree with me that they do not look like a dominant team whatsoever.
Yeah, but to go back to the whole Kelsey thing, I don't think that it's not that they're not a dominant team. There's a lot of knots in there. I think this is just more the comparison that I threw out before. I don't remember if it was you or if it was Meany on the Sirius XM show. It's the Golden State Warriors from when they were winning all their championships in basketball. They're like, cool, we'll kind of just play along. We'll do 80% of the work. We'll win most of our games. And then guess what? When the playoffs come here, that's when it matters, and we'll turn it up to 100%. I feel like they're kind of playing 80% of their ability. They're just kind of like, you know what? We're going to get through it. It's fine. We don't need to be 16-1, and we don't need to really care if it ends up being 13-4. It doesn't matter. We're going to get into the playoffs. Maybe if the number 1 spot is on the line, once we get to weeks 15, 16, 17, 18, then that kind of upticks before that. But I think it's playoffs, Super Bowl. We know how good we are. I keep comparing it. It's the Golden State Warriors when they were on their run for a couple of years.
Reminder to everyone to sub to Mayo Media Network. We're in the push for 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're about 2,000 away. So if you're watching and you're not sub, please go subscribe, smash the like while you're here as well. And again, all of these picks and cheat sheets and rankings, everything like that is in a handy article that's free to use down in the description. Just click the link and you can subscribe to the Mayo Media newsletter down there as well. I have 3 teams in tier 2 this week. How many do you have?
Yeah, tier 2, if we're going to call it a tier 2, 4.
So I have last week 3, this week 2. Have not played yet, which was the kiss of death for Philadelphia last week. The Buffalo Bills at number 2. I have the Lions at number 3 and the Vikings at number 4.
Wow. You jumped me. I gave the Vikings respect last week, and you jumped me this week. I actually still have the Vikings at 7.
So when we talked about it last week, I had that collection of teams, the Bucks, the Saints, the Seahawks, the Vikings, and I think someone else was in there as well. And it's like, I need to see one more week from this. And especially with Minnesota, it's like they're playing Houston. I have Houston ranked really highly, that if they can really lay the smackdown on them, they're going to make a big jump. I bet against Minnesota this week, not believing, but they made me a believer, Jake. Their defense looks it's not that it's good, it's that it's opportunistic and aggressive. Like they're gonna get got one of these games. And we saw this happen a little bit last season too. Like they went through that 7-week period where Flores was just untouchable mid-season. Then Kirk went down. And maybe that had a lot to do with it. Just not having Kirk Cousins in a sustainable offense just put so much pressure on the defense that it eventually folded in the second half of the season. So I'm still wary about that in the back of my mind, but they made Houston look bad.
They did. They did. And the thing is, I don't know if I believe in that long term yet. Like, I'm still ranking, to kind of our conversation last week about the Eagles, I'm still ranking the Texans over the Vikings, even though they straight up lost on a head-to-head situation. I just think more long-term, when I look at the completionness, and then just make that a word, of the team, I would still take the Texans for the rest of the season, but I'm not going to argue much. To be honest, like to go back to it. So Minnesota, I said at 7-6. I have them at 6. I actually go Houston at 3 because I would still take them over Detroit and Philly, and then I go Minnesota at 6. And maybe we have to have the conversation about Philly and I have them too high because I do have legitimate concerns about them in this offense, this offensive line, more concerns than I thought. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm with you on Minnesota, at least that I had respect from last week. I guess I have some hesitancies even watching all that game. I just feel like you just said they're going to get got. And I don't know if the getting got leads to getting got frequently, as in there's an answer to stop them. And I don't even mean the offensively because I think there are limitations there. But I think somebody might figure out the answer to this defense similar to last year. Although maybe Flores deserves all the credit in the world and he is just coach of the year candidate when he's only running the defense.
So Minnesota jumped from 11 to number 4 in my rankings. I have Houston way down, and we'll have a more bigger Houston discussion when we get to them in mind, but I just worry that they've looked bad for 3 weeks. Like they look bad against the Colts, who aren't good. They barely beat the Bears on Sunday Night Football, and they got waxed by Minnesota. Like we can like all the talent on that team that we want and think that it might come through long term, but we have yet to see it in 2024.
And that's certainly fair. I also look at the defenses. I'm not talking about the Colts, but the 2 defenses in a row. If we're going to give all this credit to the Vikings defense about being opportunistic, they actually showed up. Actually, this is three straight weeks. The Vikings defense. I mean, the Vikings defense made the 49ers look rough. So you talk about this defense that, deserves credit. The Bears defense is actually a defense that we consider to be top 5. So I'm not saying like, oh, it just passes on the defense, but I will say this. Having them inside my top 5, Texans, maybe too optimistic on what this team looks like as a whole. And I mean offensive and defensively. But I think Tank Dell is one of the best buy lows to talk about fantasy. But on top of it, next week, regardless of what happens tonight with Brian Thomas, this is his shirt. That's a signature, by the way. What happens with the Jaguars tonight? If at home in week 4, they don't easily beat the Jaguars, I'll be with you. And I will drop them probably completely outside of the top 10.
So there's not really much to say about the Bills. They play on Monday Night Football, so they're number 2. Detroit, I have at number 3, up from number 6.
I have 4.
I think the Cardinals are a pretty good team. I actually moved them up in the rankings, even though they lost to Detroit. I thought they hung tough. They got screwed at the 2-minute warning when they had a pick 6, and then they were just like, no, it was actually the 2-minute warning when it clearly was not the 2-minute warning when you looked at the replay. So that really affected the entire game. This is 2 straight weeks where Detroit has moved the ball at will on offense. Their defense has shown up pretty well. Like, it's not bad. It's not great. It's not bad. It's somewhere in the middle. But they just can't score touchdowns. Like, these drives are sustaining, and they're not even really leading to field goals any of the time. Like, it's really bizarre. The amount of yardage and the amount of plays that they're gaining, it's very akin to what San Francisco did against the Rams, where you look at the box score, you're like, they really should have scored 40 points in this game, and they just didn't. But it's 2 weeks in a row for Detroit, and I think that's going to be something that's more easily solved than some of the problems for the other teams. Although Laporta left with the ankle injury. He got carted off. He came back for 3 plays at the beginning of the second half, then had to limp off. From fantasy doctors, and I made a list on Twitter, by the way, of all the fantasy doctors if you want to go to them. And I think it's very helpful to listen to these guys talk about it, that most of them say it's probably a low ankle sprain, which means if he practices this week, he can play. And I say he's probably a 50-50 shot. I do have Brock Wright as number 3 on my tight end pickup list, but he's probably pretty useless if Laporta plays.
Oh, 100% useless if Laporta plays, and I think Jameson Williams is going to be fine for a bounce back going forward. This is what we do with wide receiver 3/4s. You have to understand the good comes with the bad. Jameson Williams, Rashid Shaheed, they're all in the same conversation. If anybody panics, go get them. I'm with you. I think the bigger thing to take away from the Lions, again, I have them at 4. I think their defense can still obviously get after the quarterback with Hutchinson, but it comes down to Jared Goff. Well, we sat here in the preseason talking about, oh, Jared Goff has only got 3 outdoor games. I was one of the people saying that. Only 3 outdoor games. Unfortunately, 2 of them are in the fantasy playoffs for us, which was the thing to worry about at the time. But indoors, this entire stretch, Jared Goff has not looked like the indoors Jared Goff that he's supposed to look like, which when you say, hey, Jameson Williams is breaking out, he legitimately has a number 2 wide receiver to add into the backfield with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. It's like, why isn't Jared Goff throwing 300-plus yards and 2.5 touchdowns a game like we know he can? I'm really going to, later today, depending on when you're watching this in your area, being Monday, I want to closely watch, try to get the 22 once that's ready to see what's going on, because I don't know if this is defenses have figured something out with Jared Goff, and there's a certain way that they're playing him. But there's something wrong. As you mentioned, the touchdowns, it's coming back to Jared Goff. There's something off with Jared Goff so far this year.
Jared Goff 6-2 in his last 8 outdoor games, by the way.
No, yeah, his
team his passer rating sucks.
The team, yeah, I was gonna say the team is 6-2.
So I have actually Tim Patrick number 10 in the wide receiver pickup rankings. That's in the newsletter right now. You can go check it out. He basically just passed Khalif Raymond on the depth chart yesterday.
Yeah, and I thought that was going to be interesting to see, because Khalif Raymond was somebody that pops up here and there, and actually popped up in some good stats that I looked at in the offseason. But yeah, Tim Patrick, I thought they might back and forth. I mentioned actually both of them as sleepers potentially in the column, depending on who, if one of the two. And you mentioned that Tim Patrick deserves to be there if there is no Sam Laporta, because somebody else will be involved besides Jameson and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
If there is no Laporta, I would have Brock Wright ranked as a top 10 tight end this week. Just because there's
why not?
There's no one.
And they're facing Seattle at home. So why not?
Tier 3 for me. Up 2 spots from number 7, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Down 1 spot from number 5, I have the San Francisco 49ers. Up 2 spots to number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And up 7 spots from number 15. When you play the worst team in the league and you beat the pants off them, you get a big boost. It's Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets at number 8.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you hate the Seahawks?
Because they haven't played anyone, man. If they're in the Vikings slot from last week. If they go into Detroit, handle business, and they're fine, they'll go up probably inside the top 5. But it's tough to give a team too much credit when they look like crap and barely beat Denver, go to overtime with New England, and then play this Miami team that might as well had me at quarterback. They've done what they're supposed to do, but they remind me right now of that non-power conference college football team that's beaten up on, I don't know,
Boise State.
Yeah, they're the Boise State of right now. Maybe they are really good, but nothing in their quality of competition would tell you anything about that.
Okay, that's certainly fair. I have 2 more in this tier. I actually have a really giant tier down to I have 3 more, because I go all the way down to 13 now. So. I have Pittsburgh with you. I have the Jets, but here's the thing: did you not say the Packers?
The Packers are actually next. They're the top of the next tier for me.
See, I would still take the Packers over the Jets. I would take the Packers over the Ravens as of today. Again, I think there's something off with the passing game with the Ravens. Look, again, 1-2, and they should be, honestly, if not for that one play, probably 2-1, but
or maybe 3-0 because they let the Raiders come back against them last week. They got real problems. Fourth quarter defense is a real problem for the Ravens right now.
But see, that's where I'm going with it. Is the third game was what I was going to bring up, being the Raiders. Talking about last week, you can't let that happen and tell me that you're better than the Packers, who have Love coming back and are not just treading water, but they are doing great with Malik Willis. I mean, you talk about Coach of the Year.
That's great and everything. Maybe once they start playing teams not in the AFC South, let's see how they do, because that division is horrible.
I don't care. Okay, that's great, but you're still out there beating teams and doing so pretty easily with Malik Willis. If you're not missing a beat with Malik Willis, and I'm excited for him as anybody. I had love for him because I went to Liberty for a year and a half, and I was like, cool, somebody from Liberty that is relevant outside of Rashad Jennings. This is exciting, but at the same time, you have to say the Packers are playing great ball on both sides, and this is without Jordan Love. I am going to take the Packers over the Jets as of today. It's 1 spot. And 1 spot. I actually still have the Steelers in front of them. I go Steelers, Packers, Jets. And then I actually go San Francisco, still in front of Baltimore. That's a whole nother conversation because you didn't mention the 49ers. And then Seattle in this group.
I had the Niners at number 6.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm a little bit lower on the 49ers.
So the
No
Niners,
concerns.
well, I mean, it really depends on if we're thinking long-term or short-term. I still am trying to project a little bit long-term here. And I still worry about the health of Jordan Love, and I think he's the most important guy to this offense. And San Francisco is just losing the war of injury attrition right now, but they're going to get these guys back. Debo is going to be back. McCaffrey presumably will be back at some point. And then Kittle probably misses next week, and then he'll be back. But the big blow that I think happened to them, and the game really turned on, is when Trent Williams went down yesterday. And it seems like he's going to be fine. So as long as he's fine, like we saw, Mason wasn't able to run the ball as effectively. They were not able to throw as effectively unless they just, tossed it up to Juwan Jennings and he came down with everything. Other than that, it was a real problem losing Trent Williams. Like that's why you ended up paying him all of the money, because he is the best guy out there on your offensive line. But if those guys are healthy, like they're a top 5 team. I have them at number 6. They lost to the Rams. They lost to the Vikings. They deserve to move down. But I'm not super concerned as long as they get these guys back within the next 3 weeks or so.
But that's the thing, is like, is it going to be Debo Samuel soft tissue? Trent Williams, like you said, he's going to be fine. Like, I hope they're right, but like that's something we talked about preseason, is the difference in this run game for everybody, not just Christian McCaffrey. The difference in the run game with and without Trent Williams is like it goes from being one of the top 2 or 3 offenses in a run game to bottom of the barrel, bottom 5, like with just Trent Williams, with and without Trent Williams, everything else the same, with and without Trent Williams. So yes, he's going to be fine. Yes, we hope for that. Yes, Debo. Yes, Christian. But what if Christian McCaffrey is all the way out through the bye? As some beat reporters have said, it's a 4 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks puts him at 8. So why bring him back from one game when you have the week 9 bye and all that stuff? And
I have a point on that. I get that he's the best fantasy player when he plays, and he's very good in real life. I think he is the least important of all of the injuries that they have.
I don't know about least valuable. I would definitely agree Trent Williams is more valuable. When we talk Kittle and Debo, I think in the same group, but it's not even so much like who's more important or less important. It's just there's so many. Like I go back to Debo's a soft tissue, and what if this lingers? George Kittle, like at this point, starting to get banged up. Like what if his lingers, or what if he aggravates the injury? Like, and I'm not saying like I'm just projecting like randomness ifs, but I think it's fair, at least in my mind, to say if they're all healthy and back and they're all back together and everything looks great, the 49ers are just going to turn back into the 49ers. And obviously Juwan Jennings looked amazing replacing Debo yesterday, but I don't know. I just get the feeling from watching the 49ers that like this is going to be a continuing problem. The fact that, look, they're still like just inside my top 10, but I don't know if they're on that top tier or even second tier right now, just because they have so many problems. Like if it was 1 or 2, sure, but this is like 5 problems.
I have Juwan Jennings as the number 2 wide receiver pickup this week. And if you want to play long-term, obviously he wouldn't be. Maybe he should be number 1 if you need someone for this week, because I don't think that Debo or Kittle is going to play in week number 4. So you obviously play Juwan Jennings. Wouldn't count on 3 touchdowns again, but he's someone that you're going to insert into your lineup. Just for reference, I have Mooney at number 1, Jennings at number 2, and Adunze at number 3. Like long-term, Adunze is probably a better play for the season than Juwan Jennings is.
Yeah, it definitely is. As he and Caleb Williams are starting to get more on the same page. I was actually pulling some stuff up from data and showing like on Fantasy Life and FTN everywhere, like the catchable targets went up for Adunze. Actually, the most obvious one was Deontay Johnson. Huge spike in week 3 for catchable targets. But yeah, Adunze is somebody that I think that the report is going to come more. I'm with you in that ranking only because is Keenan Allen coming back? And if he is, that's just another option. I think maybe he's already fallen to 3 with Odunze at this point. But the point being, it's just another option. And Caleb Williams, despite looking better, still struggled quite a bit in that game yesterday.
He did, but it's funny. There are 2 guys that he passes to that he does seem to have a genuine connection with. Odunze, one of them, and it's with the pass. Usually when he drops back, and then listen, Caleb Williams has 0 time to pass. So he like shuffles out to his right and then throws back across the field, like 25 yards downfield with Adunze running to the sidelines. They ran that play like 8 times in the game. And it was pretty successful for them. And then like they're actively scheming Cole Kmet wide open. And that's good news for Cole Kmet. And now he's running more routes than Gerald Everett as well.
Which that's like Cole Kmet went from being don't even waste your time, he's not relevant, to well, you might want to pick him up because you need a tight end. And yeah, you're stepping in front of Everett, being that option. I do have like to go back to Keenan Allen. If Keenan Allen's in the mix, it goes back to Dalton Schultz with the Texans. The fourth option after 3 wide receivers, no thank you. But if Keenan Allen's out for another week against the Rams, who are just falling apart, I would think that Cole Kmet would probably be a tight end 1, especially given all the injuries.
So with Baltimore, if we're thinking about viable starters, Henry's a must start every week. Lamar's a must start every week. Zay Flowers is, but he's going to give you some stinkers as well. And like, I don't even know if Andrews is playable right now. Played 33% of the snaps against Dallas.
Yeah. And that's Isaiah likely had more. And I don't know if that, again, if he wasn't 100% in that game or whatever happened, but that's why I was not as high on what you're talking about when we go back to Mark Andrews. I think Zay Flowers is just what wide receiver 3s are not going to hit every single week. That's why they're 3s. Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper, you can go down the list. Calvin Ridley yesterday.
McLaurin.
And include like, yeah, like this. That's why they're wide receiver 3s. Like I just want to say this out there, and I'm not like coming for people and trying to sound like smarmy, but like just understand that like wide receiver 3s are your 3s because this is what happens. Yeah. Don't get disappointed after 1 week.
If they were good every week, they'd be wide receiver 1s.
Right. Like, like that's the thing is like Tank Dell should have been a 4. I'm not saying to be like, haha, I said that, like whatever, but Tank Dell is going to give you 4 or 5 great weeks. We're going to be like, yes, I had Tank Dell. But this is what happens with 4s is you're going to get a lot of games where you're like, I can't believe he's in my lineup again. But you can live with that because they're your 4s. Now, if you went crazy, McLaurin's your 2, Tank Dell's your 2, Calvin Ridley's your 2, then we're talking problems. And like, yes, because you're expecting more from your 2.
The other guys from, I guess not the, so Charlie Kohler ended up playing more snaps than Mark Andrews and ran 3 routes to Andrews 6. So that's where they're at right now. So wait and see. It's not a drop for Mark Andrews or anything, but if like Cole Kmet is available, I'd keep Andrews, pick up Kmet and play him if Keenan Allen is out for this week. Anyway, ditto with Brock Wright. If Brock Wright is playing and Sam Laporta is out, I play Brock Wright over Mark Andrews in week number 4. And listen, if Mark Andrews is great news. You have your tight end back, but right now he is actively killing you. For San Francisco, I mentioned Jennings. He's the number 2 pickup. Ayuk is fine. Jordan Mason's going to be fine. I guess the only one that I would say if you have the bench room, what's his name? Isaac Guerendo. Like, why not? Like, it was the same reason to pick up Jordan Mason. Like, if Mason goes out, this guy looks like he's going to get all the touches.
And I was super high on him for this reason in the preseason. I actually thought there was a chance that he could become the number 2, but got hurt and wasn't out there. If you talk about Guerendo's run style, 100% a fit for the Shanahan run game. And that's why I was high on him, because I brought the example of Michael Thomas when he was drafted and the fit with Drew Brees and the Saints offense. This is just a fit matching the player 100%. Yes, if something were to happen Mason before McCaffrey goes down, Guerendo would be in the RB1 conversation for me. Back end, because we haven't seen it yet, but he would be in the conversation.
For Pittsburgh, Pickens is kind of a start. He's a wide receiver 3. Fields,
yep.
I mean, with the lack of quarterback play being any good, the rushing potential upside, although he's rushing a lot less. They're putting him in a bubble and being like, just please don't lose us the game, Justin Fields. Do what you got to do sometimes and when we need it. But other than that, just dump it off over the middle, hand the ball off to Najee for 1 yard to carry, or maybe hit Calvin Austin over the middle. Allen Robinson went down with an eye injury in that game, which doesn't seem like anything, but it did get Calvin Austin onto the field more, and I think he's a really nice fit with Fields, because he's kind of like Ray McLeod was for the Steelers and is for the Falcons now. He's just so fast that they can just throw like easy blood dumps to him, and maybe he can take off, and that's perfect for Fields.
It is. Do you know how bad this is that you called Van Jefferson Allen Robinson?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, they're basically the same guy at this point.
They're as relevant. I'm with you with the Calvin Austin. I had some hope that Roman Wilson, but between his injury and falling behind,
he's not even injured. He was a healthy scratch.
No, I know. I meant the injured from the preseason and not being able to secure that number 2 role, and then injured until last week. So yeah, he was a healthy scratch this week. I'm with you for Calvin Austin and the fact that the fit for what they're doing with Fields. And as you can see, they're scheming week to week. I don't know if you saw it, but Mark Caboli tweeted it out yesterday. There was the chart of where Fields threw, and it was all over the field with plenty in the middle. But what a surprise. They're scheming for who they play. As you mentioned, keeping them in the bubble. They're saying, Justin Fields, you do this, and that's it. The end of game, like this is what you're going to do this week, and that's it. And the interesting thing you said, not running, he ran fine the first 2 weeks, but then yesterday they said stop. Like this is going to be, and I know Justin Fields was part of it. Like the plays weren't there for him to run, but they're just kind of coming with this game plan of like this is how we win with Justin Fields. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work, but this is what we're doing. And I think that Fields as a QB1 is out the window because of it. He's more of a mid-level QB2. Yesterday was his best score at 18 points so far this year.
18 points. I would have taken 18 points in my DraftKings lineup. I played Derek Carr. It's bad news. I had Derek Carr paired up with Shaheed and Juwan Johnson, who both scored 0 points. And I still because I had Juwan Jennings, I still cashed.
Do you know what? Like, so the funny thing is, you say that sometimes it's the best moves that you don't make. Like, I had a league where somebody had 2 quarterbacks, dropped Derek Carr at 12.59, and I wasn't expecting it. I would have 100% picked him up, but I needed a quarterback with no Jordan Love, and I had to turn to Andy Dalton. Thank you for that person not dropping Derek Carr until 12.59.
I wouldn't worry about Shaheed though. Shaheed dropped 2 touchdowns.
No,
I mean they were contested catches, but they were taking end zone shots with him, and he could have caught both of them.
That was the thing. So when I do my super quick wrap up podcast now, the one thing I said is buy low, or if you're in a slim league, a 10-team league, and somebody drops Shaheed, immediately go get him, because as you said, Derek Carr not just took 1. It's not just he's taking 1 shot to Shaheed every single game. That was 2, and there's probably a 3rd play left on the field. And if you look at the box score, Shaheed's not even going to show up because it was only targets. But Derek Carr was taking those shots. This is just what happens with Shaheeds of the world. You got to understand they're not going to hit every single week. And Derek Carr just had a Derek Carr kind of game, as in his bad self. Like, he has plenty of good ones, but this was the Derek Carr from last year where, like, yeah, he looks terrible.
I have Braylon Allen as my number 2 running back pickup. Jets are number 8 in the power rankings. I don't know what to do with Lazard to save my life. Like, is he just going to catch a touchdown every game?
No, I actually think Mike Williams is coming, like, moved up again, and he's getting back towards 100%. And actually, he played fewer snaps on Thursday night than he did the week before. I know. I think he's moving up to 100%, and the fact that, like, that just might have been a matchup, and Mike Williams is 100% there yet. What I was going to say back to the catchable targets is interesting is, you know, there's like a handful of wide receivers with 100% catchable targets. Mike Williams is one of them. When Aaron Rodgers is thrown to him, every single one has been catchable. And that just kind of points to a little bit of like, there's a connection there. Maybe I'm stupid. I've been on this since the preseason, saying that Mike Williams is going to be the number 2 once he's 100%. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and it's going to be kind of like what we saw with the Colts yesterday with Adonai Mitchell and Alec Pierce. Now that they're rotating, now that Josh Downs is back, they were kind of sharing that 12-set spot outside.
Rotating is very generous. I think A.D. Mitchell played like 7 snaps.
No, because he can't. I'm talking about specifically 2 wide receiver sets. They were swapping out. Yeah,
if they were swapping in and out, Pierce played 43 snaps to Mitchell's 7 in the entire game.
Yeah, but the 2 wide receiver spots is when Pierce was coming off for a few. What? I'm just saying, like, let me just finish. Like, the 12, like, I get it's 7. I'm saying that he's coming off the field. That Alec Pierce is coming off the field for those 12s. Anyway, point being, I'm just saying, where I could be wrong about Lazard and that they're swapping going forward is my concern, and that it doesn't become just Mike Williams' number 2 role. That's what I was getting at.
I mean, I have Tyler Conklin as the number 2 tight end pickup of this week behind Cole Kmet as 1 and 2. Listen, we're searching for tight ends here. Does anyone have a pulse? He seems to have a pulse.
For 1 week. Sure. He had 0 pulse. He was dead for 2 weeks.
That's fine. He was dead for 2 weeks. That's what his 1 game probably puts him at like tight end 9 for the season.
I know, I'm looking right now. They got Denver this week. No, I'd rather take, like as you said, Brock. I'd rather take Brock Wright with no Sam Laporta.
I would agree with you, but if we get Sam Laporta, then that's off the table.
Hell, if Tucker Kraft is hurt and out, I'd rather just go with Luke Musgrave.
Depends on if Love starts or not, I suppose.
Sure. Then they have Minnesota. That's yeah. With Minnesota, the way their defense is playing, I need Love under center, 100%.
A few years back, the irons were the best part of my golf game. But after a swing change about 2.5 years ago, my driver's an absolute weapon at this point, but all of a sudden I couldn't hit my long irons, and even some of my short irons just were not going on the same trajectory that I always wanted them to, or at least that they used to do. So when I heard how the new PXG Black Ops irons can dramatically improve my game, of course I had to give them a try. Anything to improve my golf game. So I called up PXG and I got my current irons and I took the PXG Irons Challenge and it has been amazing. The consistency off the club face is unparalleled to any club that I have ever used. Best thing about these irons is because I feel so comfortable that I'm gonna hit the sweet spot on them, I can control the club face, the high, the low, the cut, the draw, no problem. And the new PXG Black Ops irons are the game improvement missile launchers that are going to give you explosive distance, and it's going to feel softer than a baby bunny. The new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit and maximize performance and fun, because getting better is fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That's a great price for a great golf iron. Take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $100 MasterCard rewards card. Hurry! This offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Tier number 4, I mentioned the Green Bay Packers. They lead this off. They go from 17 to 9 for me. Philly drops 2 spots, or drops 8 spots, sorry. They go from 2 to 10. Houston goes from 4 to 11, and Seattle moves up from 16 to 12. Already talked about Seattle, about just play something like this is their first real test in week 4. They can see a huge jump in the rankings. And it's not like if they lose to Detroit, I'm going to punish them too much. It's just this is right around where I think they am a fringe top 10 team. Like, it's one big play to DK per week. Eventually, Charbonnet gets there, and that's kind of
it. Like, eventually, I missed on Charbonnet not having him as RB1 this last week because every single performance before this, when he's been the guy, he failed. Like, the touchdown saved his day 2 weeks or last week, depending on how you look at it. But in the past, when he's had this opportunity to fill in for Kenneth Walker, it's been kind of that Rachaad White. It'd be like the volume gets him there, and the volume gets to him fine. He's an RB2, and if he scores a touchdown, he's an RB1. But he looked the best as he has for his NFL career yesterday. I'm still not ready to buy into him, and Kenneth Walker is coming back at some point. Maybe not this week, because do they have a week 5 bye?
Oh,
I remember looking at their schedule.
I don't know, but I just assume because the oblique injury kept Kenneth Walker out for 2 games last year. He's now missed 2 games this year. I just assumed he would be coming back this week, but if they do have a bye, they might keep him out again.
No, they don't. They don't. That's what I was looking at. Week 5 is they get the Giants at home. So you could potentially either get a really great Charbonnet play or Kenneth Walker coming back and he just being back to the play because they're at Detroit this week, which isn't the best.
Here's a question for you. If Dallas loses in New York on Thursday night, is Mike McCarthy fired?
You would think. Like, him and Sirianni have to be on the hot seats in this division.
I mean, it feels like Sirianni's trying to make it more difficult. Like, he's like trying to teach his team, hey, we need to simulate difficulty in games and then try to win them. It's like, that's how it's going to be in the playoffs, so let's try to get it out of the way now. But their offense is legit bad without A.J. Brown, and I don't think Devonta Smith plays this week now after he basically got his head taken off in that game. So they're down to Barkley and Goddard. Barkley, Goddard, and I don't know, they might as well be running out an XFL wide receiver core now. Is Johnny Wilson the only guy with a pulse? They even lost Kobe.
Because I was gonna say, like, Covey got, like, is he okay? Dotson is still learning this team, and Dotson's not really the thing. Yeah, Johnny Wilson, kind of like a hybrid-y tight end for who he is. This is gonna be Who do the Eagles have this week? I'm looking right now to see the at Tampa Bay. I mean, at least they get at Tampa Bay, so that should help. But yeah, it's going to be all Barkley. I go back to the one thing you didn't mention: the offensive line. And I'm not saying it's just the loss of Jason Kelsey, but the offensive line has been struggling a little bit too because they also Lane Johnson got banged up too. Is the offensive line is having issues, and it's funny you say that is because I don't know if it's an offensive line or what you're saying is Sirianni's galaxy braining himself, like you brought it up, like playing a video game, turning it up to legendary mode, but. They're not even doing the tush push. They're bailing. They faked a tush push to go on a sweep. And like, I don't know, or the counter. And I just don't know what's going on. If it's Sirianni or if they have legitimate problems on offense.
I think without AJ Brown, he makes that entire offense work because their offense looked terrible against Atlanta on Monday night too. And they still should have won that game. So they're still good, but they're not anywhere close to optimal at the moment. And if all of these guys are going down and one guy, like, look, I can say that if Josh Allen gets hurt for the Bills are going to suck. If Patrick Mahomes gets hurt for the Chiefs, they're going to suck. But if AJ Brown is that important to your team that you can't sustain a receiver loss, what happens when other guys get hurt? Now that you have three receivers down, I don't know how they're going to move the ball.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be all Hurts and Barkley, and maybe that'll work this week, but Tampa Bay is at least a good opportunity for it to work.
If I'm Green Bay, I sit Love again. Like, you got these 2 wins with Willis. Like that. The worst thing that can happen is bringing back Jordan Love at not as close to 100% as possible because week 4 doesn't matter. Week 17, week 16 to get into the playoffs or get home field advantage. And the playoffs matter. I get this is a game against Minnesota. It's a division game, but I'd be far more concerned about Love not re-aggravating his knee. Or we've seen this done so many times. Like Burrow was the big example, I think 2 years ago, whenever it was. But over the course of the past 3 years, we've seen quarterbacks rush back to play, and they've been horrible in their first game back. They should have just sat again.
I don't disagree with you, but my was because they're already 0-1 in the conference because they lost to the Eagles. So you have the conference on top of it, and this is their first division game. It's just you start 0-2 in the conference, 0-1 in your division, and the Vikings look good, and also Detroit's in the mix. These are all now looking like this is supposed to be Detroit and Green Bay. Minnesota wasn't even supposed to be part of the equation. But if you let them roll off to 4-0, and I'm agreeing with you, but I'm just presenting all the reasons why they might try to force Jordan Love out there if he's even 90% because they're looking at from that lens.
Emmanuel Wilson was far more involved than I thought that he would be. He's looking like a pretty good stash should anything happen to Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, he's going to probably be the biggest riser in my waiver column only because I had Emmanuel Wilson pretty far down the list as in like, hey, if something happens to Jacobs, he's fine. But he looked really good yesterday, and I thought Marshawn Lloyd, which there was talks about this in the preseason, was going to step past him. Then they drafted him, and also past A.J. Dillon, who is obviously not with the team anymore. But I'm looking at it and saying, you know what? He's good enough and looks good enough in this offense, and this is also not a Jordan Love offense, that if something were to happen to Jacobs and at his workload every single week and in his career, Wilson's clearly the next one up. This isn't like a backfield like the Giants where if Singletary gets hurt, it's going to not be just Tracy. It'll be Tracy and Eric Gray and somebody else involved. This is if Jacobs goes down, Wilson's going to walk into like a 65, 70% workload. And for that reason, I'd say right now he's a top 10 backup.
For running back pickups of the week, once again, you can find this down in the description. The link is there for the week 4 pickups cheat sheet along with the injuries and these power rankings if you want to find them. I have Bucky Irving at number 1, Braylon Allen at number 2, Ty Chandler at number 3, Emmanuel Wilson at number 4, and then your boy Tracy at number 5, and then Rico Dowdle, who...
I like it.
Listen, Dowdle's getting the work. It's just useless.
He, not totally useless. He was an RB3, so I guess that's borderline useless.
I'd rather have the guys I don't play on the team that could be easy running back 1s or low-end mid-2s should I ever need to play them in that circumstance. And, like, I don't know, would you rather have Chuba Hubbard or Dowdle on your team? I'd probably still rather have Hubbard, even though he's going to lose his job in 2 weeks.
So that's where, like, I was going to actually say, I would have Dowdle over Tracy, and I would take him over Chuba only for this. And this isn't a guarantee. Just that the Cowboys finally gave him the majority of the work. Zeke was basically a non-factor. It's like if they are making the shift, if the Cowboys are making the shift to say, you know what, we see what everybody else sees. Dowdle was actually better on a per-touch basis than Tony Pollard was last year. I don't know what happened in the preseason where they're like, Dowdle is just a timeshare. Maybe that's the case. Maybe this is one of those running back situations that we talk about a lot where the timeshare piece is best in a timeshare role, and asking him to be the full load lead is a bad move and is going to ruin him. But on the chance that on the Cowboys that Dowdle turns to getting 65% of the workload going forward because of what happened yesterday, that's why. So I'm actually taking your argument and saying, actually, why I think Dowdle could actually have top 20 value is if they're doing this. Now, of course, they might not. Maybe they activate Dalvin Cook and this all goes out the window. But for that chance, at least they have that chance. Tracy still needs an injury in front of him. That's why.
I would tend to agree, but right now, I just don't see where the upside is. Maybe in these softer matchups against the Giants and Washington, he can prove. But I don't think we've seen the last of Zeke either. It's a lot like we saw with Ford and Donta Foreman in that split, and I get that they were trailing in that game from the mid-second quarter on, so it was all Ford all the time. But I just think week to week, the game plans are going to be different. Dallas doesn't really seem like it knows what it wants to do early in these games on offense.
Early? I don't think they really know what they want to do, period. The only reason they knew yesterday is because they had to, and they kept just chucking the ball in the second half.
There we go. There's the move. Chuck the ball. Score points. Easy game.
Hey, you get the Giants. Like you said, if they don't walk away with this game, McCarthy, I wouldn't be shocked if McCarthy gets the slip.
Tier number 5 for me, dropping down a few spots, but they haven't played yet. It's the Cincinnati Bengals leading off this tier. Atlanta is a big riser, despite going 1-1 since the last time we talked. They go from 24 to 14. Tampa goes from 10 to 15 after their loss to Denver, and New Orleans drops from 12 to 16. What happened with New Orleans offense?
Yeah, this is what happens with Derek Carr in this New Orleans offense.
They had 2 pass plays the entire game. It was deep to Shaheed or dump off to Alvin Kamara. Eventually they got it going with Olave and towards the end of the game, and they ended up scoring a touchdown on it, but there was no mid-range passing. There was an active want to not pass the ball in that game, which was just really surprising, considering how well Atlanta threw the ball against Philadelphia on Monday night.
You know what the answer is, right? It's no Taysom Hill. It's ruining their offense. No, they don't have the threat.
I mean, with Taysom Hill, they average 42 points a game. Without Taysom Hill, 12 points a game.
There you go. That's what it's all about. Jokes aside, I think you brought up part of this. Tongue in cheek, there is part of the reason in there for Taysom Hill is just since week 1, Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson haven't been a thing. When they both got a touchdown, it's abandoning in the middle. I don't know if it's just they don't have the weapons for it. And again, jokes aside, there is no Taysom Hill. The tight end's just not being involved. I think the simple answer, the Arkham's razor, it just goes back to Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to do this. This is why, as an NFL quarterback, he's a mid-level quarterback. This is why the Raiders moved on from him. He's just Derek Carr. You're not going to get good games every single week. And sometimes he's going to force an issue that he think is there. Maybe their game plan all week through practice was this is the shots that we need to take because this will win. This is where they're exploitable. And then it doesn't work. And Derek Carr's screw you. I'm going to keep running my head into the wall until it does work. And it didn't work. So I think that's just what it comes down to. It's just Derek Carr is going to have Derek Carr games.
I had Tampa at 15. I actually like them against the Eagles this week. I mean, they manhandled the Eagles in the playoffs last year, and I don't know what sort of offense Philly can run against Tampa, probably a lower scoring game. But Bucky Irving played 18 snaps against Denver. He had 9 carries and 3 targets. It's pretty good. And he looks as I mentioned on the Sunday night recap show, he looks shot out of a cannon every time he touches the ball. Rashad White does not.
No. I say no like that. Definitely missed on some things, but this is one, I hammered all preseason and all offseason since they drafted him. Said Bucky Irving is going to be a problem for Rashad White, and this was why. But at the same time, I don't think so. Everybody pause if you have Bucky Irving and be I stashed him on my list and whatever. That being said, is he's actually a potentially sell high because I don't think White's going away. What the comparison I keep making is the Steelers of last year, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, that Rashad White is going to hang around. He's going to keep getting probably still 40 to 50 to 60% any given week. It's going to keep shifting between the two. But what do we know last year, Pat? You wanted Jalen Warren because he was better on a per touch basis. He's better objectively when you watched. And more often than not, he had the higher ceiling in fantasy, unless a touchdown. So I'm going with Bucky Irving because it's the Jalen Warren of last year.
Yeah, just don't be compelled to put him in your lineup because he looks good right now. I mean, if you have to, you have to. There's no buys. There's guys that you can pick up if need be. But to have him there, maybe he'll work himself into a bigger role. And God forbid anything happens to White. He's going to be awesome.
Oh, he'll be in the RB1 conversation. But that's why I said potentially a sell high too, because depending on what your team is like, if he's your 4th, 5th running back, which probably was given drafts, somebody might be overreacting and be like, oh my God, he is taking over. He is going to be a top 20 running back. And that's where you could potentially fill a need on your team, because if he came out this week against the Eagles, Rachaad White fell into the end zone for a touchdown and Irving on his 10 touches only had like 40 yards and nothing. These kind of games are still going to happen, and people will immediately like, oh my God, it's not Bucky. Like, it's not happening. That was fun to start.
Yeah, just keep him on your bench, see what happens. Don't be compelled to do anything either way, and hopefully the chips will fall to you. Atlanta, I did bump up. Is Atlanta's offense bad, or have they played 3 good defenses? They played the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Chiefs. I would say that those are maybe 3. I mean, Pittsburgh might be the best defense, and those Chiefs and Eagles might have top 10 defenses, but they just...
Yeah,
they really struggle to get they get right around 20. I mean, they cracked it against Philly on Monday night, but other than that, like you could watch them for 2-minute increments and be like, man, this offense is dynamic. But then you watch them for 60 minutes, it's like, yeah, a lot going on here that doesn't work.
I think the biggest answer is, again, come back to kind of like the Derek Carr conversation. It's Kirk Cousins still getting back to 100%, and this offense still connecting and getting a flow without Kirk Cousins to start. A terrible Kirk Cousins in week 1, which we all know ran only out of shotgun and pistol, and we know how predictable the offense was. And then in week 2 and yesterday, we started him dropping back under center more. It's just, I kind of think of it as like the Falcons are just late to the party to start the year. They didn't have a real preseason. Week 1 was like week 1 of their preseason. It wasn't like where people are like, oh, that's their 3rd, 4th preseason game. This is why week 1 sucks sometimes. No, I feel like they're getting out of the preseason right now. And we saw, to your point, we saw some really good signs, but there's still some really rough edges. I think this is going to continue to improve for them. You can't, like, if Kirk Cousins was at some point getting close, and he is 100%, you can't deny the Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts, and Darnell Mooney. He has Ray McLeod. He has weapons. This is going to start to come around more. And I'm as you can say, buying in. I would have had Atlanta higher. I have Atlanta over Miami. I would take Atlanta over Dallas as of today. I would even take them over 0-2 Cincinnati as of today. I need to see Cincinnati get on track tonight before I take them over Atlanta.
I have them 1 spot behind Cincinnati, but I have them well ahead of those other teams that you mentioned because I bumped them from 24 to 14. Just one note about Tampa. You want to talk about buy lows? Mike Evans is the best buy low right now.
Oh, 100%. There's nothing to add to it. Can't agree more.
Yeah, I'm just giving the Bucks a mulligan on that one. Like sometimes you get Baltimore got by the Raiders. The Bucks got by Denver. Like the AFC is better than the NFC. Like let's keep that in mind when we think about this stuff.
Yeah, but the Buccaneers didn't just get got.
Knicks looked like he didn't look good, but for all the rookie quarterbacks, he looked weirdly competent. And listen, there was a few passes that probably should have been picked off. They weren't, so you get away with some of those. But I thought overall, like he put his team into good position and just didn't make a lot of stupid decisions, which is that puts you in like the 99th percentile of these rookie quarterbacks who do nothing but make terrible decisions.
Well, and for Superflex, this is why I had some of the excitement because he ran. This Bo Nix runs. He runs like he did in college and calls his own number and for a rushing touchdown. So as long as he can be competent, I'm not like hey, gets excited about the Broncos. The funny thing is if you said, what Broncos do you want in fantasy? It's Bo Nix and Superflex and done. We're done. I don't want any of the wide receivers. This is somebody different every single week. No, I don't want any of them. I don't want any of the running backs.
Listen, Javonte is in that, like, if you had Carson Steele right now, I would trade Carson Steele for Javonte Williams.
You can have Javonte all day, every day for the rest of the season.
Okay, I'll
There's
trade for
none.
less. Trade you Adam Thielen for him.
I'd take hurt Adam Thielen over this entire backfield. There is nothing good in this backfield. You can't predict anything good in this backfield. It's going to be somebody different every single week, and everybody's involved. This is a full-blown committee. He's using 4 flipping running backs, and they all suck.
Well, Tyler Batty got all those touches when it was garbage time, so I wouldn't really worry about him.
But what is this? Is it going to be garbage time the other way another week? That's the Broncos. They stink. The only person you want is Bo Nix and Superflex.
Now, Cortland Sutton gets his targets every single week. It just, what does he do?
And he's
with
had
them?
one
Who
good out
knows?
of 3 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but maybe Bo Nix is starting to get better. Like there's that progression throughout the season too, that you would assume that some of these guys become more comfortable with NFL speed, start to develop a rapport with some of these guys. And listen, we don't think that Cortland Sutton is untalented. He's getting a bunch of volume. It was no different than the case that you made with Amari Cooper to me last week. And I was like, nah, I'm going to pass on that. And look, it paid off in huge dividends this week.
It did. So, okay, who does Denver have this week? At the Jets? No, thank you.
No, that's not that. So maybe you trade for him. Maybe you could pick him up when he puts up zeros this week.
He gets dropped after this week?
Yeah.
Like as my wide receiver 4, sure, you can maybe come around a little bit on Cortland Sutton. It's just go back to week 1, it was Vele. Week 2 is Josh Reynolds. And this week it was Cortland Sutton. That, to go back to the argument at the beginning of the show, the wide receiver 3s and 4s, sure, Cortland Sutton should be your wide receiver 4 and what you expect. That'd be the only world I would live with him as a wide receiver 4. But okay, you got me to have a second person, but it still has nothing to do with the backfield.
Tier number 6, I have from 18 to 17, the Arizona Cardinals. From 14 to 18, the Dallas Cowboys. From 13 to 19, the Los Angeles Chargers. And then from 27 up to 20, the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know how they're doing it, but they should have won week 1. And then they lost all their guys. They got absolutely murked last week by the Cardinals with no offensive linemen. But it felt like, given an extra week and knowing what he had to play with and the pieces on the table, I thought that they were actively trying to lose in the first quarter when they had 1 pass attempt and 10 rushing attempts for nothing, but they just kept grinding. Man, Stafford is good. I don't know if he's going to play all 17 games because he's taken some big hits. But while he is out there, they're competent.
The weirdest thing about this too is I pulled this up last night before I did the pod for True Media, and the 49ers. So 2 things. The Rams gave up, obviously, it's not surprising. The Rams gave up the highest quarterback pressure percentage of anybody in week 3 by a large margin, 58%. The second part of it is they gave up the 4th highest when only sending 4 defenders, as in no blitz, no extra rusher, just 4 straight up the middle. There was a 4th highest. Somehow, they were only 3rd in run stuff percentage, that being the Rams. Like, they could still run the ball. And I said this on the pod last night. I'm going to spend this afternoon doing so, looking more at this game. Was that a Kyron Williams thing? Or is this offensive line pieced together as just a bunch of guys who can actually run block, but can't pass block to save their lives? Back to the old, I can't remember the guy that used to be for the Giants that would suck in the one they tried to change his feet, and then he was good in the other. But anyway, I'm with you on like Stafford can. No, that's the current one. Yeah. This is before Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. Is the other one that they drafted in like the first round that they kept trying to move his feet and say like, all right, well, if we make his left foot drop back and then he could pass block, but he couldn't run block. But anyway, it was a bust of an offensive lineman pick. What a surprise for the Giants. Like, I'm with you. Stafford is competent with this offense. Tutu Atwell apparently going to be a thing that we thought that could be for Tyler Johnson or even Jordan Whittington, is they made Tutu Atwell that thing. We
spoke about this last week on the show that Tutu Atwell only ran 10 routes last week, but ended up with 4 targets. And I think it's very clear that if there is a Rams wide receiver to own, it's him, because he does everything that you would want. I really like him in like DFS and on DraftKings because he's going to be cheap. He only runs 2 routes. He runs bubble screens or like jet sweeps because he's so fast. They try to give him the ball and they set him up, and bomb it to him.
Yeah. And the problem here is, like, while I would take him, and I know, like, what I was going to say is I know somebody's coming for me in the waivers because they're like, it should be Tutu Atwell. Why do you hate him? And I was like, because he's never done anything for his entire career. Like, he's just Tutu Atwell. Like, he'll have some games where they design plays like they did, and he'll go right back to being Tutu Atwell, which is why I bring this up. They're headed to Chicago this week. I'm not touching Tutu Atwell this week.
I could see that. Like, I don't think that there's a huge difference between him and someone like Trey Tucker on the Raiders, except that
that's a good example.
Except for the moment, Tutu is probably their number 1 in terms of option on the team, where Tucker is probably 3rd or 4th.
Well, and that was the whole DeMarcus Robinson conversation, is that like his
right.
ranking and role.
But you were right. It
wasn't
going
to change.
It never changed for him.
And the problem now is DeMarcus Robinson's getting top coverage.
Yeah, and he can only be successful when Nakua and Kupp are out there because they draw all the coverage. Completely understand that. Just Tutu Atwell is going to be like Ted Ginn was for the Saints. You're going to have these games where it's like 3 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. Then you're going to have ones where it's 2 for 8 yards. Like, that's just what you're living with. But again, this is a deeper league type thing. He's someone that's like so in the rankings, I have Mooney, Jennings, Adunze. I have Noah Brown at number 4 because I believe in Noah Brown. And I think that he's going to be good on Monday night. Watch him score 0 points now or be inactive. But Tutu Atwell at number 5, Michael Wilson at number 6, Calvin Austin, Trey Tucker, Johnny Wilson, Tim Patrick. That's what I'm doing for wide receiver pickups right now.
I might have slightly different order, but yeah, I don't have any problem with that. It's very similar names that I'm going to have into my waiver column. The only one I'd be hesitant, like I only want Michael Wilson if Trey McBride's out.
Yeah, and it looks like he has a concussion. I assume he's going to miss the game.
We did that a couple times last year, though. Like nobody comes back in 1 week, and then all of a sudden last year, it's like, this guy's back. This guy's back.
Yeah, that happened later in the year. Early in the year, they have to have like the good press of like, oh yeah, see, we're taking concussion seriously. When like the games matter, they're like, nah, that doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, like the hip drop tackle? Like, we're going to take this seriously. Like, Joe Mixon gets hurt. Like, they don't do anything. They're like, oh, yeah, we were supposed to find him. Yeah, okay.
Cam, we didn't really talk about it. I assume that either Mixon or Pierce will be back. Like, I feel like we all read the Cam Akers situation perfectly. It's like, this guy sucks. He needs to fall into the end zone to have any value. And he did get in on that weird pass in the third quarter.
He did. He did, which the thing was, too, is like, it didn't start off terrible. It's just all of a sudden they were behind, and then they were playing catch up, and it's like, well, Cam Akers are screwing us, but it also had to do with the fact that the Texans offense was screwing us. But yeah, the touchdown saved his day. That's what we were hoping for. I tweeted it out Sunday morning, like 11 something, and we're like, I'm ready to be hurt again by Cam Akers.
Not only is this Chargers situation dire because of Herbert, who I think is going to play in week 4, Joe Alt got hurt too. And he was an absolute difference maker in both the pass and run game up front. Obviously, they do not have to play the Steelers again this week, but they're playing the Chiefs. I like them with the points because I think Herbert is going to go, but he might not last in some of these games. And him being injured really does cap their upside. And if Alt misses any time, that really hurts them offensively.
I think the Alt thing is bigger than Herbert. I think Heineke can to go to the comparison from other offenses, stuff like that, I think the way this offense is now, with being this run balance, with being Harbaugh and what they're asking for them to do, like similar to the Justin Fields with the Steelers, what they're asking Justin Fields to do. Now, of course, Heineke can't do as much as Herbert does, but I think that Harbaugh and the offense will be designed enough to say, this is what you need to do, Heineke. Stop playing with some of that recklessness that we've seen in the past, especially like last year, but kind of rein in the offense. The thing is that's good for us in fantasy is it's down to Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. I'd probably downgrade Quentin Johnston more than Ladd McConkey, although Heineke will still probably take a shot or two flinging it downfield as he does. But it's going to be J.K. Dobbins in his backfield, Ladd McConkey, and then we're not really concerned about much else. And you bring up this matchup. Well, honestly, the one that would be kind of the sacrificial lamb to Snead in this defense would be Quentin Johnston. So we're probably already hesitant on Johnston to begin with.
Yeah, I would tend to agree here. Tier 7. I got, actually, Monday Night Football, there's 2 games, and obviously we're recording this before Monday Night Football. Code Mayo at Underdog hit a big one yesterday. It was very nice, and was 5 Jordan Whittington yards away of hitting another giant one as well. Could have been like a 5K day for me instead it was a $2,500 day. Either way, still very nice. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now gets you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and there'll be some free squares, some tokens, some boosts. Listen, it's one of the most fun things you can do. If you have leans in fantasy, Underdog is where you want to be and play the higher or lower. I went with Jaden Daniels' higher rushing yards this evening. I went with 2 other things that are in the newsletter if you want to check them out.
two other things.
It was T. Higgins over like 46 yards. And James Cook over 82.5 total yards.
Okay. Yeah, I came away and I missed it by myself, like same similar to you. Is what was the one that killed me? Oh, freaking Cade Otton took the under, and Cade Otton, he hit the over, and he like blew past the over. It was like 23.5 or something like that. But I had Pickens for the over, Malik Willis for the over passing, and I forget what the other one was, but stupid Cade Otton ruined it.
So my next tier is 3 teams, tier 7, and it's basically the not good, but not dead yet. It's Indy, Jacksonville, and Chicago, 21, 22, and 23.
Oh, see, I have one more. It's the team you tried to yell at me about last week because they have defense.
The Browns. I have the Browns next as well, but they're the best team of the next tier.
Okay, then that's fair. Like, so we're in the same conversation here.
So yeah, so that's tier 7, tier 8. For me, it's all one tier. Cleveland, 24, Denver 25, Vegas 26, Washington, who's yet to play, at 27, the Giants at 28, Carolina at 29, Miami at 30, New England at 31, and Tennessee at 32. Miami's a lost cause.
Unless Tua comes back, which who knows? Yeah.
But by the time he comes back, they're going to be dead. They're going to be out of it.
I don't know, how long is it going to take? Like if they,
well, he's on IR, so it's at least 3 more games.
No, I know, but like, how much longer is it going to take? That's what I'm saying. Like, are they just not going to bring him back at that point because he wants to play, and obviously this team stinks? Like, I don't think it's dead at that point. Even if they go 0-3 the next 3, was what I was going to say. That puts him at 1-5. So they're still, I mean, they're pushing it, but they might bring him back for 2 or 3 games. Now, if they lose those, another conversation. I'm not going quite that far with Miami, but I get your point. I actually think the bigger one is as crazy as it's going to sound, it's nitpicky. I have all the same teams as you do, except for Miami. I put Miami right there by Cleveland. It comes down to, I have Carolina back up at 27. Carolina's team is not terrible.
Where does Deontay Johnson rank if Andy Dalton plays every game rest of the season at receiver? 21, 19?
I wasn't going to go quite that high. I was going to say fringe wide receiver 2. Like if you want to,
25.
We'd have to throw out the names. Yeah, 22 to 27, somewhere in that range, but pretty much where he did as people drafted him in the preseason.
So someone asked me that he was dropped in one of their leagues, how much fab to spend on him. And I basically said just as much as it takes. Like, I don't know. That's why I hate about, we spend this much on this fab guy. Every league is so different when it comes to fab because you have your 1 or 2 guys that would be like, oh, I think that guy's good. I'll spend all my money. Like I'm one of those guys in some leagues that I play in too. Just it all depends on who you're playing against. But I think that he is good enough with Andy Dalton, and there are so few players that pop up. Like if this was 3 years ago, I think it would be different. But people are way too smart now. Like all the guys that would know, like your Jordan Masons of the world. Like in any good league, Jordan Mason was owned anyway. So it's not like you could have spent $1,000 or $100 or whatever your fab budget is to go get him. He just wasn't available off the hop.
No, and I think, someone asked me last night, is like, what is your listeners, readers, that type of thing. I said, I really think it's a bell curve. Same thing for doing this show. I think there's 10% that are just as inexperienced as it gets. They don't know what the heck they're doing. They would drop Deontay Johnson. They would drop, as somebody asked, I was in a league that Deebo Samuel got dropped because he didn't have the bench spots and he was hurt and we don't have IRs. Okay, figure somebody else to drop. So you have that 10%. You have the 10%, which honestly, I don't know why you're watching us because you know as much as we do and you think we're dumb if we disagree with you. So why are you even watching? But the majority is that 80% in the middle, which is they know football. They know Jordan Mason should be on rosters. They know the stash, all these running backs that we're talking about. They can't in all of their leagues, but they knew not to drop Deontay Johnson. And why I scoffed at you when you said the fab is because it's the same thing. It's 80% of you know this and it's fab, but you also know your league. Like I could tell you, Deontay Johnson, let's say $100 budget, you should go spend 60 something because he shouldn't be out there and you want to save a little bit in case one of your running backs gets hurt. One league that'd be like way overpay and the next closest is 20. Another league would be like you didn't even get him because somebody went up to 95 because they know nobody else of this talent that's going to show up. It's like a Jordan Mason when Christian McCaffrey got hurt if he was available. You just know more than we do. So I agree with what your answer was, Pat, is whatever you think it's going to take to make sure you get him. If that means you have to go 90%, then go 90%.
Here's a perfect example. I went and looked, and it's very helpful too if you just sort by fab transactions every week, even if you don't make any pickups, just to see what other people are bidding. And then you know who's spent themselves out right away or like how people are dipping their toes in the water for certain levels of players. But in our league, Isaiah Likely was available in our 14-team league after week 1. 5 people bid on him. The winning bid was $91 out of $100. The next closest bid was $13.
See? Well, that's somebody tweeted out about the NFBC when that ran last week. One league, he showed it. Carson Steele went for 443 because they do 1,000. Went for 443. The next closest bid was $1 out of 1,000.
So listen, you have to be comfortable. I think that Deontay Johnson, if available right now on your waiver wire, if you got him, he'd be a guy I'd splurge on to make sure that I got whatever it took.
Yeah, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Defenses to stream for the week. I got Chicago at home against the Rams, Vegas at home against Cleveland, Tennessee at Miami on Monday night, New Orleans at Atlanta, Minnesota at home against Green Bay, and then like the next tier down, like Arizona against Washington, Miami against Tennessee, the Rams at Chicago on the other side of the ball of those. Do you have any ones that you would throw in there?
No, you pretty much mentioned all of them. I think Minnesota's getting close to being the point where they need to just be
owned.
a defense you roll with. Yeah.
Yeah, I still like Chicago defensively, fantasy-wise, better long-term than them, just because they're always on the field. So that's helpful sometimes. But yeah, I think you're right.
They're really good.
Yeah, and they're really good. And Minnesota could be in that realm too. Maybe I have them a bit too low. But if they face Malik Willis again, yeah, they can turn him over. But as we've seen through 2 weeks with Malik Willis, it's just a lot of rushing attempts from everyone.
They're not even letting them. And then the plays that they are just kind of easy Madden-esque type of plays where it's pretty hard to turn over because it's either there or it's not.
He's actually a really good fit. I can see, like, I didn't make him like, man, Malik Willis sucks. I can't believe they traded for him. But with the receiving core that they have, where they have a lot of these guys where you can throw the ball 5 yards to them and they can do the rest, it's actually a nice fit for him.
And so that goes back to the Malik Willis that I knew from college, is being able to hit those kind of throws. And I'm not victory lapping Malik Willis at all. It's just, comes down to coaching. This is why we talk about it all the time, and why I kind of pulled back. Like, I railed and yelled, and we'll see what happens tonight. But, like, why is Cliff Kingsbury not letting Jaden Daniels throw the ball downfield? He has a great deep ball. There's a reason that Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors had 1 billion touchdowns between them. It's because Jaden Daniels is also a really good thrower downfield and into the end zone. And we saw a few shots, as you brought up Noah Brown, which I still think, I'm hoping he has a good game tonight because I stashed him in a bunch of leagues, is that can open that up for him. But where I pulled back and said is, like, maybe it's coaching. And Cliff Kingsbury's playing the smart game with Jaden Daniels. Is like, hey, we're going to take steps. You do this, you do this, you do this, and we'll start to open the offense more, instead of the Bears, where it's just like, we're going to throw all at you once. Good luck, Caleb Williams. And now we see the struggles. And that's what this is what the Packers are doing. It's like, oh, Malik Willis can only do this? Okay, we'll make the offense work with that.
By the way, drop DeAndre Swift. He is terrible.
Oh, 100% drop. You want none of the Bears. The only I would stash Roschon Johnson in deeper leagues because he clearly looked like the best option yesterday. And then all the Raiders, drop him. Want nothing to do with him as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Zamir White might be the biggest Ponzi scheme of 2024.
It made no sense after Pierce used him last year, and he was good. And I don't think anybody was expecting that kind of a repeat. But it was like,
what would you rather own, Jake? Zamir White or those Trump coins?
Can I take Dora 3?
No, I think the Trump coins might have more value right now.
They actually might. You're going to find somebody that would pay up for that on like eBay or something.
They might be a collectible. Zamir White will not be. That I can be assured of at this point. Madison might have more value than him. Which is none.
Nobody watched Madison for his career, and then all of last year with the Vikings, that Antonio Pierce was like, yeah, that's the guy I want running at the goal line. What the hell?
Poor Swift, man. The guy, because they still play Khalil Herbert near the goal line, and Roschon got a touch or two. They finally bring in DeAndre Swift on that 4th down and run. The worst play I've ever seen on 4th down.
Was there not like 6 guys in his face as soon as he got the ball?
Immediately. And they ran, like, so many teams. It kept happening with Najee in the Chargers game, too. Just the pitch plays out. They just got. I would say I'll have to go. I mean, I'm not going to go back and watch the all 22 or try to cobble this together. But one of you industrious viewers out there can do that. But go take a look at every pitch play to a running back that was run in week number 3 and tell me what the average yards per carry was, because I bet it was -2.
I wonder if I can pull that up on True Media. You gave me a mission today. I'm going to see if I can find that out.
If you find it out, tweet it at me at the PME on Twitter a little bit later on.
I'm so curious now.
So
that's a great question.
So let's go through just quick fantasy guys, rapid fire. Guys you can start on Cleveland. Cooper, maybe. Ford, maybe.
Ooh, I don't even want to start Ford. It's because it's just clearly Foreman if they're in the lead or in contention.
Rapid fire, Jake. It's a yes or no question.
Okay.
It's a yes, no,
Cooper.
or maybe. Njoku might be back. Njoku might be back this week. Still don't think I'd play him.
I would. It's tight end.
Denver, you've already said it is who?
Sutton the end.
I think Javonte Williams still has value a little bit as like a running back 3 in deeper leagues. Vegas, yes on Adams, yes on Bowers. I like Trey Tucker in deep leagues because he kind of fits that Tutu Atwell mold like I mentioned before.
Yeah, but it's him or random Myers, and they get Cleveland this week, so no.
Okay. Washington.
Oh, I'm hoping Noah Brown gets in the mix tonight.
So McLaurin, maybe Noah Brown, Brian Robinson, Jaden Daniels.
So, yeah, even Eckler. Eckler's full point PPR, 10 and 10.
That's great. He's as good as who the hell scored 10? Tank Dell, who we actively said did nothing, scored 10 points yesterday in PPR.
Hey, it's an RB3.
The Giants, is Malik Neighbors a top 5 wide receiver?
I still don't think so, but I'm going to look so wrong on this one. If
He might be.
I mean, if he's going to get 70,000 targets a week and Daniel Jones makes 80% of them catchable, that's the biggest thing is I wasn't expecting that.
Well, here's the thing.
Although
those targets aren't catchable to normal people.
I was just about
Malik
to say.
Neighbors just catches them.
The touchdown should not have been as hard as it was for Neighbors to catch.
The catch he had earlier on that drive to get them down there was an even better catch.
I know. It's just, hey, look, chuck into his area. Yes, Neighbors potentially is at least top 10.
Singletary is a play for me Thursday night against Dallas. Dallas's rush defense is putrid.
Oh, yeah, I would still play him. That was a whole separate conversation. Yeah, 100% Singletary.
Carolina, Dalton's a fringe streamer right now, and Deontay Johnson's a play, and I think Chuba Hubbard's a play until Brooks comes back.
Agreed, and I think if there's no Thielen, you might get Leggett in deeper leagues.
Maybe, but I would feel if Thielen is back, I'd say he's a fringe start. For Leggett, yeah, deeper leagues only. On Miami,
yeah,
A-Chain, that's it.
I'd still play Tyreek Hill.
I know, but like, what do you do with Tyreek and Waddle? Like, obviously you have to play them because you have them, but like,
you don't have to play Waddle.
Okay.
The points per game, he falls down to being a wide receiver 4/5 when there's no 2 under center. I pulled that up before that game last week. He's a wide receiver 4.
New England, Stevenson, maybe if the offensive line is back. And Henry.
And they got San Francisco this week. So, yeah, Henry.
Yeah,
Stevenson's iffy this week.
Like their big struggles last week, and they've had the 10 days off. Like they were missing 4 linemen. They just legit couldn't block.
Yeah, but I don't know how much better it's going to be even with 2 out of the 4 back against San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kyron was able to run all over them.
Again, was that Kyron or was that the offensive line? Because I told you the pressure numbers, they were there.
Tennessee, I have last. You can make a very compelling case that none of these guys are startable in like a regular fantasy league.
I think Tony Pollard is because it's running back, and then Calvin Ridley, depending on why. But Calvin Ridley is a wide receiver 3. The problem is people got really excited and that put him back into the 2, and he's still the 3 range. Pollard, the Titans, 3 different weeks, 3 different game plans, full on split, like one being the runner, one being the pass catcher, and Spears week 1, week 2, all Pollard. Week 3, it was drives. Like what? I don't know that Tennessee knows what the hell they're doing.
Chances are they don't. I mean, they really tried to coach Will Levis not to throw the ball backwards this week, and he didn't. So big step up for them.
No, he just got a dude's stuff in his face.
Well, that happens. Jake Ciely at theathletic.com. What do you have coming out on Monday evening for your waivers? When's that dropping?
That's midnight Mondays as always, ranks midnight Tuesdays as always, and then the podcast Tuesdays and Wednesdays for waivers and ranks, and then the recap / look ahead on the weekend / Sunday night.
I will be back on Monday with golf, Tuesday with spreads, and rankings on Tuesday as well, because I am traveling to the President's Cup this week. So I'm getting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday content all out of the way, and then restarting fresh on Wednesday once we're all set up there for all regular shows on the Pat Mayo Experience. Plus, I'm doing those shorts every single morning, not every single morning, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm doing the 5 to 10 minute hits in the morning if you just want the info dump. And as always, all this information, all the rankings, all the injuries are available in the cheat sheet that's down in the description right now. So please sub to that free newsletter, sub to this YouTube channel, sub to the audio podcast if you prefer that, and smash the like while you're here, all right? And use code Mayo at Underdog. Help us out, okay? Help yourself out with some big winnings. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!